We are continuing on Ayin Gimel and Beis. We are at Gufa. So we're going to go back and start and discuss how do we. We're going to go back to discussing how Lechi and Korah work and when exactly we can fix them and allow them to. And Lechi and Korah is you can put a side post or a beam on top in order to change a carmelit, something that had been Asr Midrabanan, into being mutter. So the way it works, the question is, how does it work? Does it work because it's a wall, or does it work because it's a heker? Right? Is it mishum mechitza, or is it mishum heker? Right? So which one is it? So again, so we're going to get into cases where each of them apply. Okay, so because lechi is generally mishum heker, whereas the korah is mishum mechitza. Because we say tikra yard zotim, we say that we do the wall from like the top post, and then it goes down. Okay. So, Gufa. Now we have the little intro. So, Gufa. Okay, no, it's just checking these pictures before I don't have any pictures ready. Sorry, but Gufa. Amarav ein mavoy nitar belechi v'kora. Achu batim chatzaro p'tuchon l'tuchon. So Rav says, mentioned earlier, that if you have a mavoy and alleyway, lechi and korah are only relevant if there are houses and courtyards opening into it. That answers Ellie's question from yesterday. Right, so then you want to have both, right? So this question is why, right? So Shmuel Amar Filu Bayit Echad v'Chatzer Echad. Shmuel says no, even easier, even if there's only one house and one courtyard. For Rabbi Yochanan, even more generous as far as to when you're allowed to apply the laws of Lechi and Korah to a mavoy. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu Chorba, meaning even if there's only, even if there's a ruin and a courtyard, that's enough. I mean, you don't. All you need to have is like the bare bones structure, not even the people, and then that's enough, right? We don't require you to have the full everything. So because it's one of the disadvantages to mavoy is that it's more closer to Rabbim than a chatzer, a courtyard is. So even though, for instance, a lechi and korah or a korah works for a mavoy, but it wouldn't work for a chatzer, right? They have different ways of fixing each of them. So depending on which way you're pushing it, it's both a chumrah and a kula. Certain ways of fixing apply to each, and also like the size of gaps is also relevant for each. So we'll don't worry, we'll get into the Gemara. We'll discuss these things. I'm just framing. Okay, so. That's that question. So so the Gemara has answered Ellie's beautiful question from yesterday, I think pretty well. Hopefully that'll guide us through the rest of this with the status of the mavoi. So Amar le Abai le Rav Yosef. Amar B'Yochanan afilu b'shvil shel kramim. So Abai told Rav Yosef, does Rav Yochanan say that you could use it even if it's a path in a vineyard or an orchard? So is that real? Would that work too? So Amar le lo Amar B'Yochanan el b'churba dechazi ledira. No, we're not talking about a true destroyed thing that nobody's living in, and then like there happens to be a path at the other end. Rather, when he said a churba, it meant a churba where you could have lived in. Just it happens to being a abandoned house that you could live in, even if you're not currently living in. Aval shvil shel kramim v'lo chaz ledira lo. But if you had a path going to a vineyard, so that's not a place where you could in theory live. Therefore, you can't pretend that it's a mavoy. It's and therefore you can't use a lechi or korah to fix it. So Amar Huna Bar Chinana, Azar Rabbi Yochanan l'tamei. So Rabbi Huna says this fits with Rabbi Yochanan's other opinion, did not. So whatever in Mishnah, which is within Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. So we have this a later parak about Gago Becha Karpefot Becha Chatzerot Rishut Achad Hein Lechelim Sheshavtu Tochan V'lo Chelim Sheshavtu B'Toch Bayit. As I say in the Mishnah that you have roofs and you have that's roofs and other karpef is an enclosure that's not really meant for usage, and then we have, or whether they be courtyards, they're all considered to be the same area in regards for the utensils that resided in them, but not for the utensils that resided in the house. Meaning if an item was a given location surrounded by walls, so you can move within that given walled location, whatever it may be. You can't bring it into the house. Similarly, but right. So again, whether that be it was on like again you had a shared rooftop with had again rooftops that all had walls around them, or if you had a carpef and that storage type enclosure, or if you had the chatzer, the courtyard. So the things that are in the courtyard could say even if you have no even if you don't have an Eruv, they're all considered to be one area in terms of moving around just in that area, assuming the walls are there. Of Amar Rav, and Rav says, halacha Rabbi Shimon hu shelo irvu. And Rav says the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon in the case where they did not make an Eruv. So that's you can only carry it when you haven't made an Eruv yet. If you made an Eruv, that'll create an issue. About irvu. If you made an Eruv, we won't let you do that because you might come to make a mistake and carry from the houses to the courtyard to another courtyard, and that would be prohibited, right? Because the Eruv is only meant for, it would only in this case is only for a particular courtyard having an Eruv. So when there's no Eruv, we can join the courtyards if the walls are built properly, but we would not allow that in other cases because that'll lead to confusion. So Shmuel Amar ben Irvu ben lo Irvu. Now Shmuel says that Rishimon's opinion is whether or not you have an Eruv. V'chein Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Similarly, Rabbi Yochanan agrees that's halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Irvu ben shelo Irvu. That all of these areas, you have to assume they're fully walled in. You can carry in them even if there's no Eruv allowing you in that given location that's completely walled in. Alma Lopez Rina Dilma Ata Puke mi Ani debatin lachatzer. Hachanan Lopez Rina Dilma Ate La Puke mi Ani dechatzer lachorban. So similar to the fact that we're not worried about that whether there's an Eruv or no Eruv, that you'll remember that you can go from your house to the courtyard. Right, we're not worried that since you might make that if you made an Eruv, you might make a mistake and go from not only from your house to the courtyard you made an Eruv with, you might also make a mistake and go from that courtyard to the next courtyard over, even if your Eruv isn't covering both areas. So since we're not worried about that, so then here too, we shouldn't be worried that you're going to accidentally carrying from the chatzer into the ruin, the abandoned structure. We're not worried about you doing so because we're sure that you will be following what you're supposed to be doing, and you'll know that you're only allowed to use the courtyard, but not the abandoned structure, which isn't properly set up for use on Shabbos yet. So, Yativ Rabrona Bakamar Lahashmadita. Now, Rabrona repeats what Shmuel just said just now. Then Amarle Rabbi Elazar Bar Rav. Then Rabbi Elazar responds as follows: Amar Shmuel Hachi. Did Shmuel really say that? Amarle In. He said yes. Amarle Achve Lately Ushbuzi. Achile. So he said, show me where Rav lives because I'm going to check this out. This doesn't make sense to me. So he went over to Shmuel and he says, did you really say that? And he's like, yep. So then Rabbi Elazar then asked, so then Rabbi Elazar says, wait, but didn't you say that you have to treat the mavul's relationship to the chatzer the same as the chatzer to the houses? So why are you allowing that? Shouldn't we be worried that you're going to make a mistake and start and carrying incorrectly? So don't you? Again, how could you be fixing this as just a lechi and a korah, like a mavoi, if it's not properly like a mavoi yet? Ishtig. Shmuel is silent, so he doesn't have an answer. So the other question is, kabla mine olo kabla mine. When Shmuel is silent, what does that imply? Does that imply that he agreed or that he disagreed? Right? Are we going to say shtika koda? I mean, like he is silent because he had no response, or is he silent because like because it's not a relevant question. He's like, yeah, I don't know how to answer that because it's not relevant. Which one was Which one was it? The Tashmas. Let's figure this out. Let's come and some proofs. Ahu mavoa dehava dayer bay, evut bar ihi. So once upon a time, there was a mavoi that Evut bar ihi resided in. Avile lechiyat ushara le Shmuel. He put a lechi on the mavoi, meaning a side post, and then Shmuel allowed him to carry with him there. Then Ata Rav Anan Shadye. Then Rav Anan came over and threw the side post. He didn't want, because he thought it was us for Mikari, therefore he threw away. We've had this case before. It's similar with somebody removes somebody else's permitting it, and it does that badly. We'll see if this one goes any different. So Amar Muvua de Dayerna Bey Vatina Mishmei Damar Shmuel Nati Barav Anan Bar Nishtye Min. So, sorry. So Rashi comments and said that when did Rav Anan throw it away? Not while Shmuel was alive, but rather after his death. So, right, which would mean that it doesn't really, which would mean that he had always been usher, and just he only decided to do it when Shmuel's dead. So then, and now Ibn Bar-Ihi comes forward and says, "You mean to say that the Alad I've been residing in, and that I have been walking in based on what Shmuel said, Rav Anan is all of a sudden, usher again? Like, how's that possible?" So Shema Mina lo kibla mine. So therefore, we learn from here that Shmuel clearly did not accept Rabbi Elazar's objection. If not, he would have never let this setup. Assumingly, the setup of, you know, the picture of this, the setup of Ehud Bar Ihi was. Oh, here, yeah, just a picture. Sorry, I guess I didn't scroll down. I was on the wrong page. Sorry. Here we go. So let me finish here. So basically, the fact that Shmuel allowed this for his entire lifetime implies that he didn't think it really was Aser. Okay, so here are some diagrams so we can visualize it a little bit better. So here is the case of the Churba. Right, this is our alleyway. Here we could put the lechi. Again, there's a chutzner, and this is again for the single. This is for the again Shmuel's opinion. Again, where even one chorva and one chutzner is enough for you to call this a mavoi. As we mentioned, the difference, like physical building wise, mavoi and chutzner is very similar. The difference being, it seemingly just how many people have access to it. Seemingly, the difference is in, the order goes, your house opens into the courtyard, built into the mavoi. The alleyway. As far as walls go, as in house has a roof. Chutzner doesn't have a roof. The mavoi doesn't have a roof. And chutzner has walls. A mavoi has walls. And just there's normally more walls on a chutzner with smaller gaps in a mavoi, but structurally they're almost identical. So that's why this whole discussion is really popping up here. So the question was, do we compare this case to that case? As in, do we say that a shvil can turn this mavoi into a mavoi, or is only some place that's like, again, a mavoi requires multiple people having access, not just an individual, according to this opinion. So that would be the question about whether a shvil applies or not. Whether or not we had our little path into the vineyard, is that another access point for people? What makes it relevant, or is it the fact that you have to have multiple homes accessing the mavoi to call it a mavoi? And so that would point towards that. That's a picture from the Ritva Shita of how that would work. You have any? Is there? Now this is for let's touch a little bit later. It's about the case of we'll back to the case with the non-Jews, but we'll get there. So okay, so again, back to our Gemara. Back to our part of what we are is the fact that Shmuel really hold his opinion that you can allow a side post even when there's only minimal. When there's only, let's see, Shmuel's original opinion was, let me go read it inside. Yeah, even if there's only one house and one courtyard having access, meaning it's basically like somebody's house into their courtyard, into the mavoi, that's enough. Which means basically the mavoi is the same thing as the courtyard, just there had to be a courtyard in between. But other than that, it would be the same thing, like structurally. So seemingly he says yes, because he allowed, this is only Ehud Bar Ihi's mavoi, seemingly nobody else had access, yet he allowed it for the entirety of his life. Okay, just an interesting note in terms of this, in terms of his throwing away the post. So again, never destroy someone else's Eruv unless you consulted with every Rav you can possibly find who then has agreed that you should destroy this Eruv. you think they're definitely violating Yisrael Deraisa. Unless you know that for sure is the case, please don't ever take down any Eruv because you'll lead to issues. This happened before, and we saw that. So similar elements in the wrong here. The similar case happened by when the Reish Galuta had wanted to have everybody eat in his nice garden in the Bustana, right, in this nice shaded tree, and then then some other of the Maraim of the Maraim came and took out his setup of leveled walls, and then got everybody upset, right? And then Reish Galuta was lamenting how terrible rabbis are. You don't really want the head of all Jewry and ever do that. That just seems just bad, right? So then generally it's frowned upon to do that. But again, that's what happened. Again, the one plus side from the fact that the story happened is we know that Shmuel really stood behind his opinion for the entirety of his life. So Rav Anna may have done what Rav Anna did, but it doesn't mean that we should be following him. So then, no, maybe he really accepted it. Why? No. So the other option is that here that it wasn't only the place of Ibud Bar Ihi, but rather it was also there's a shul in the courtyard as well, and since the Chazan would the person in charge of leading the davening, and also probably took so the Chazan had lodgings in the shul in the Beit Knesset, and that's why it would be considered to be these multiple people having access to the Mavoi. So then what would be the case then? So now we're getting back to our original story. Ivud bar Ihi savar makom pita garim. And then, and even though Ivud bar Ihi thought that it goes by where he eats, so therefore he should be the only one living in this area, yet Shmuel allows me to eat here, to live here and do the lachi. But Shmuel tamed amar mokom lina garim. But Shmuel could still be according to his own opinion. He says that it goes by the place where they sleep. So, which would mean then that the person is that the Chazan is enough of a person to mean there's two people having access. So again, so which way, So again, so how does we pass getting thereafter in terms of that? That's again that's up to debate. But as far as we've solved the reason for why Shmuel would have allowed it, even if he doesn't necessarily hold of the single of the only having one person of issue whether or not you need one or two people having access. So here it seems like Shmuel believe you need to have multiple people having access now. Okay, so so let's just sum up that whole segment because we're going to go on to the topic now. Again, so we're talking about that whole case was talking about at what point is a mavoi considered to be a mavoi and you're allowed to use a lechi and a korah. And we mentioned that it depends on there's the range of opinions whether or not it needs to be multiple houses and multiple courtyards, or just one house and one courtyard, or again one house with its courtyard and a destroyed or abandoned building, even if nobody's currently living there, as long as you could live there. Then we discussed why each of them were, and then we the story with Shmuel and how and with Rabbi Elazar saying whether or not is that really the case. Will you allow with just one person having access? And it seemed to be that the case that Shmuel did, but it may have been also because there was actually another person who technically slept there, and therefore that would be why, because there actually was two people. Again, and that's the question of when something is considered to be a mavoi, as meaning relevant because when can you use a lechi and a korah to monitor it as opposed to another means of making it mutter. So that's what they're debating, and now we have figured out that part. Now we're going to get back into what we have been discussing a little bit earlier than that in the previous mission as well about when their non-Jews have access to it and how that'll affect the Jews' access. Okay, so Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Mavoy shetzido echad goy, v'tzido echad Yisrael, ein ma'arvin oto derech halanot l'hatiro derech tachim l'mavoy. So if you have an alleyway with a, make sure here. So we see here, there's a mavoy. One side is the non-Jewish, the non-Jews house over here, and then on the Jews' house is over here. Okay, and then the connection between so one way you'd have to do the renting out from the non-Jew in order to have enable him to use the mavoy on the chatzer. They're trying to use the mavoy. Chatzer, he's the one who has access to, so that would be fine for him to use. So the question being, again, what's he supposed to do about an eruv? Can he ever use the mavoy? And also, can he join using the what about the Jews over here? That's what we're trying to figure out. So we have a mavoy. One side has a Jew, one side has a non-Jew living on it. So you're not allowed to make an eruv through the windows, meaning an eruv that'll connect to the Jews on the other side, in order for residents to carry through the door into the mavoy, right? So you can't combine, with the who has that access to. Amar le Abai l'Rav Yosef. Marav afil b'chatzer. Does this mean even in the case, even the chatzer is not able to be used? Meaning, so again, if you only, let's say there was a chatzer with Jews on one side and not Jews on the other side, that'd also be a problem. Amar le in ilo amar mai. Meaning, either way, that's still the same issue of you're being connected with the non-Jew, right? So we still have the case where you're on one side, non-Jew on the other side. So you can't simply, make an eruv without addressing the issue of the non-Jew, right? Again, still it's going to be usher. Again, the issue with living with a non-Jew we'd mentioned was because it's a zera shemil yilmod ma'asav. It's a zera d'Rabbanan because you might learn from his actions to be negatively affected by the non-Jew. So again, so you haven't solved that yet. So therefore, that's an issue that's in the background, and so therefore we're not going to let you make an eruv yet. Like you have to address that first, right? You have to address the non-Jews' access before. Again, you're making the eruv with the Jews. Again, if the non-Jew is there, then that's still a problem because his ability to access the problem that has to be dealt with. And an Eruv won't work for a non-Jew unless you rent from him, because non-Jews think that Eruvin is voodoo magic. And so, or either that, or because again, it's just the Gzer D'Rabbanan of you learn from them. So therefore, we're not letting, and therefore you're supposed to rent. Which again, either that was the original Takana D'Rabbanan is, again, it's a knas for you living next to non-Jews. You should have lived with, a complex of only Jews. And the fact that you didn't means that we're going to make you, pay a fine, so that you remember that you shouldn't be living there, and you should. But so that's where we're at. So the question is, so then Rishon had said, well, what's the issue? So BAYT says, here's the Hava Amina Taved Derav. Mishum Takasavar, Ein Mavoy Nitar Belachi, V'Kol Ra'ah, Shuv Atim Chasrov, Tuchil Haducha. So now a buyer responds. So he says, why was he asking a question about the courtyard being different between a Jew versus a non-Jew? Again, wouldn't it be the issue that I mentioned? So the answer is that no, it's because his question is he's saying he wants to know. Normally, if it's a mavoy, the way you would make it mutter is to use a lechi and a korah. But that's only if you have houses and courtyards opening into it. But here, again, there's only houses. So, right? So why would I need two issues? Because Rav already mentioned explicitly that you need both houses and courtyards. So why would I need this case also, but the non-Jew? Like, why would Rav say have both of them? That seems, they're teaching the same din. That seems weird. But no, you need both. No, if you had only the definition of mavoy from another place, you'd have thought that a non-Jewish residence counts as a residence for the purposes of Eruvin. Here too, it implies that it's not considered to be residence, so let render an area considered a mavoy. The imehacha, but our case here, with the non-Jew on one side and Jew on the other side of the mavoy. Hava mina lo yadana batim kama Mashmalan, Batim train. But here the question is how many houses are open to it? Right? You may have thought that that only thing that's relevant is the number of houses that open in, and then you could have said, well, non-Jewish houses don't count. In fact, this one, we have this one also. In addition to teaching us about the case of the non-Jew, it also teaches you that non-Jews count towards the number for being a mavoi. So, and now Hashtag Amarav Afilu Chatzer Tamad Rav Dekasavar Asur Lasot Yachid B'Makam Goy. And now the Rav says this halacha applies to even a courtyard. So that means that the opinion of the Rav is that the problem is that the non-Jew lives there, and that's it. Again, that's the Rabbi mentioned earlier about it being the issue. You have the only issue in the case of the non-Jew is that it's because the non-Jew, and you're not supposed to live with them without having done the renting. Find out from him, and that's why it's out there. How do you know that they're both there? That's why we need to have both cases. It teaches both sides of the, teaches all those different things. That's why it needs to be stated twice, not because it's redundant, rather because it gives you a fuller picture by the multiple mentionings. Amar of Yosef, Ihachigi, Hainu de Shaman Ale, La Rabbi Tavla de Amar, Goy Goy, Tre Zimne, Avoya Dana my Amar. So Rav Yosef says, so that's why when I heard Rabbi Tavla say the word goy twice, I didn't know what he was referring to when he was teaching this. It was like, wow, you need to mention the non-Jew twice. But now I understand because he's teaching you both about the din of that a non-Jew home counts towards the number of houses and courtyards that are open and have access, but it also counts towards the number of but it also implies, but again, so the non-Jew counts both in terms of, again, structurally, in order to define this as a mavoi, you need to have multiple people having access to the mavoi. So it counts for, again, multiple houses and multiple courtyards, so non-Jew counts. And it also is telling you that about the issue of the non-Jews access being a problem in terms of the Gzera D'Rabbanan of you're not supposed to live with a non-Jew because he'll have a negative influence upon you, and that's why that is. Okay. So again, so just we actually finished. We finished with plenty of time today. Okay, so let's just here. So again, just a 2-second wrap up of the two topics that we covered. So we covered the question of the status of a mavoi. When is a mavoi a mavoi? We said that a requirement is multiple multiple points of access. Either the question is, do they need to be multiple people having access? Is it multiple houses and courtyards having access, or is it just the structure, which is Rabbi Yochanan's opinion of even if it's a destroyed area, that's enough. We discussed that the opening structures or have to be places that are somebody can actually live in and sleep in properly. If not, then those don't count for multiple access points. We discussed the case of whether or not you can do, again, whether or not one person can work or not. Or again, you need multiple people or multiple buildings. We discussed the case of the non-Jew, and we said that the non-Jew both he counts in terms of his house can count towards the total number of people who are having access. And we also discussed the fact that the non-Jew, there still is the issue, the problem of you living with a non-Jew and the Gzera D'Rabbanan of maybe learn from his actions.
Oh yeah, have a great day.
All right, you too. Take care.
Thank you.